Welcome to EPG Pathshala. I am Pirzada Rauf. I teach at Jindal Global University. And today in this lecture we are dealing with resource management in resource geography. In resource management we have some keywords, and those keywords are resource management, natural resource, institutions, environment and interest groups. In its introduction we will talk about institutional arrangements, which are the policies, systems and processes that organizations use to legislate, plan and manage their activities effectively and efficiently, and to coordinate with others in order to fulfill their mandate. In the field of resource management, institutions play a dynamic role in fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goals. Institutions bring together all the stakeholders so as to facilitate the process of resource appraisal and management. Institutions by far are the converging points of the technological as well as indigenous know-how of people and the state agencies. But in recent years, the unequal distribution of control over the resources have undermined the human welfare aspect involved in resource appraisal. One of the many reasons for such condition is the lack of people's friendly institutions, which could determine the divergent interests involved in the conservation of natural resources. Further, the corporate cum state monopoly over the resources have snatched the people's agency in resource appraisal. The need is to build such institutions which would cater to the growing needs of the sustainable oriented resource management. The causes of ecosystem degradation, which usually we talk about, learn about and listen to, are rooted in an economic system that often rewards exploitation than natural system. Putting dedicated and accountable institutions in place which have paramount importance to combat ever-increasing climate change and fulfill the requirements of post-2015 Sustainable Development Goals, as known as SDGs. The institutions need to be equipped, not limited, with the state-of-art technologies to analyze current situation and future predictions regarding food security, climate change phenomena, market situation, both at country, regional and international levels. Their capacity to steer the management of holistic ecosystem rather than a single sector should be developed. For example, the current institutions which are responsible for environmental or ecosystem management in our country or in the world, here in Ethiopia, are requesting more capacity towards implementation of the relevant programs and projects as well as enforcement of laws. These institutions are housed at different organizations, as a result of which common planning and programming has become difficult. The conflict between different institutions towards fulfilling their own goals may be costlier than had there been coordination and collaboration. Here, the idea of coordination and collaboration is important. Willpower and morality affect the degree of which people really act accordingly. Absence of stronger and dedicated institutions for management of ecosystems and environmental resources could lead to loss of natural assets such as forests. Furthermore, in the absence of such institutions, the ambition of a country, its ambition towards better economic growth may be put much pressure on. For example, rapid integration of global agricultural markets and subsequent cropland displacements in recent decades have increased large-scale tropical deforestation in South America and South Asia. These examples are very stark. So, we have to understand that growing land scarcity and more stringent land use regulations in these regions could incentivize the offshoring of export-oriented commodity crops to sub-Saharan Africa. Institutions are determined by the interests of those who are economically powerful. For example, in India, until recently, the power of Ministry of Agriculture and Farmer Welfare was stronger, while institutions responsible solely for natural resources was either absent or without any financial resources and power. Additionally, lack of formal coordination among formal institutions, weak formal institutional capacity, weak or lack of cross-sectional coordination, and inappropriate policies are identified as very serious constraints for implementation of landscape approaches. The interests of local communities matter the most. The traditional knowledge matters the most. Importance of local participation to manage natural resources has proven to be an effective approach for sustainability. World Resources Institute has indicated that we have to have sustainability. We have to make actors like communities accountable through provision of access to environmental information and encouraging broad participation, which is vital. So insufficient information acquisition, management and dissemination, among others, are socio-economic and policy-related factors of deforestation. The general, dedicated institution capable of generating information and evidence-based data to link the community with policy-maker interests probably is lacking. Among other things, having well-positioned institutions that can respond to various needs emerging from different interest groups while maintaining sustainability with prosperity might be the key to success. The institutions which are involved are several institutions that at various special levels are involved in resource appraisal and management. These institutions have interpolitical agendas which ensure that the wider human interest attached to the resource are taken care of. The institutions at various levels are discussed in the following order. Intergovernmental organizations. It involves the governments from different states. Here states means countries, which work in coordination with the local state, that means a country, local state apparatus to implement the management-oriented programs. The stakeholders at this level are the states, that is countries, and their concerned population, represented by their respective leaders and ministers. Following are the main institutions involved in this task. We have ECNC, that is European Centre for Nature Conservation. It's a non-governmental organization working for conservation and sustainable use of Europe's nature, biodiversity and landscape. Since its establishment in 1993, ECNC has developed a working partnership with an extensive network of organizations and institutes from all over Europe. ECNC provides its expertise to national and regional governments, intergovernmental organizations such as United Nations, the European Commission, the European Environmental Agency, and also the Council of Europe, and to institutions working in financing, land use, and research. It works closely together with the NGO community. ECNC projects are clustered in 5 major thematic programs: the conservation, the nature and society, interaction between business and biodiversity, green infrastructure, ecosystem services and biodiversity assessment, ecosystem and species management, and The other important aspect is the International Union for Conservation of Nature, which is very famous at the world level, and the abbreviation for this is IUCN. It has the membership of union uniquely composed of both government and civil society organizations. It provides public, private and non-governmental organizations with the knowledge and tools that enable human progress, economic development and natural conservation to take place together. IUCN was created in 1948 and has evolved into one of the world's largest and the most diverse environmental networks. It harnesses the experience, the resources and the reach of 1,300 member organizations and the input of some 16,000 experts. IUCN is the global authority on the status of the natural world and the measures needed to safeguard it. Its experts are organized into 6 commissions dedicated to species survival, environmental law, protected areas, social and economic policy, ecosystem management and education as well as communication. The ability to convene diverse stakeholders and provide the latest science, objective recommendations and on-the-ground expertise drives IUCN's mission of informing and empowering conservation efforts worldwide. It provides a natural forum in which governments, NGOs, businessmen, scientists, local communities, indigenous people, faith-based organizations and others who can work together to forge and implement solutions to environmental changes. The third and most important is United Nations. United Nations, as the sole representative of the world's human population, it shares a chunk of responsibility with respect to natural resource management. Various treaties and agreements at UN have helped in wise and judicious management of our scarce resources. Following are the major UN organizations involved in the task related to resource appraisal and management. The Division for Sustainable Development, DSD, it seeks to provide leadership and catalyze action in promoting and coordinating implementation of internationally agreed development goals, including the 17 Sustainable Development Goals. The work of the division translates into 6 core functions, and these 6 core functions are as follows: to support the UN intergovernmental processes and processes on sustainable development, analysis and policy development, capacity development at the request of member states, interagency coordination and stakeholder engagement partnerships, the communication and outreach, and the last is knowledge management. Here, the United Nations Environmental Programme with the World Conservation has a monitoring center which works with scientists and policymakers throughout the world to place biodiversity at the heart of the environment and development, with decision making to enable enlightened choices for the people and for this planet. Here we have 100-strong international team which has recognized leaders in the field and have unrivaled understanding of the institutional landscape surrounding biodiversity, policy and ecosystem and its management. Based on Cambridge United Nations, the collaboration between United Nations Environment and the UK charity WCMC, using its significant experience of supporting the biodiversity, information needs of decision makers across a variety of sectors, linkages to the UN system and thereby intergovernmental environmental processes, the menu of services that it provides to the countries includes delivering and developing capacity on biodiversity, information systems, addressing the data access, data management, data processing, which includes identifying data sources, also data management and analysis of this data, including the capacity of national statistics offices to respond to international requirements. Here, ecosystem assessments and natural capital accounting, the tools to measure the state of the natural environment, and also the ability to provide services and to evaluate the impact of public and private sector management, investment in natural capital and green infrastructure. We also have research-oriented organizations. This is the most important aspect of research geography, as research-oriented organizations are very important. These are non-governmental management-oriented bodies that combine intellect with the stakeholders' interest. These programs in such organizations are mostly research-based, which has some semblance of practical utility in an empirical manner. Following are major research groups active in the area: European Conservation Institutes Research Network, Connect. So here it deals with environmental problems on the international basis, develops and enhances international collaborations on the basis of research programs in the priority areas of ecology and nature conservation. It provides scientific underpinning for action on European and global problems in the field of environment and nature conservation. Second is International Institute of Environment and Development, IEED. It's a policy and action-based research organization, has been doing wonderful work and at various levels has promoted sustainable development to improve livelihoods and protects the environment on which these livelihoods are built. It specializes in linking local priorities to global challenges. IEED is based on London and works in Africa, Asia, Latin America, the Middle East, the Pacific, with some of world's most vulnerable people. Here it talks about both people as well as resources. It works with them to strengthen their voice in the decision-making areas that affect them, from village councils to international conventions. The focus areas include reduction in greenhouse gases emissions, the gas emissions to the atmosphere from the use of fossil fuels for air travel to another transport, reduction in greenhouse gases emissions to the atmosphere from the use of fossil fuels based on energy and the consumption of electricity in the offices in London and Edinburgh. Environmental research groups which deal with the organization which is concerned mainly with environmental protection, their approach towards resource management, which is basically of two types. And these two types are, first, nature-oriented, building a symbiotic human and natural relation. Major organizations in this field are, the most important one is Greenpeace. As the website says, Greenpeace exists because the fragile earth deserves a voice. It needs solutions, it needs change, it needs action. This is a great slogan. Greenpeace is an independent, global, championing organization that acts to change the attitudes and behavior, to protect and conserve the environment and to promote peace by catalyzing an energy revolution to address the number of threats which are faced by our planet: climate change, defending our oceans by challenging wasteful and destructive fishing, and creating a global network of marine reserves. protecting the world's ancient forests and animals, plants, people that depend on them. It also deals with working for disarmament and peace by tackling the causes of conflict and calling for elimination of all nuclear weapons. The disarmament treaty, it supports it and wants a fully disarmed world. It also helps in deals with creating awareness about hazardous chemicals in today's products and manufacturing. Campaigns for sustainable agriculture by rejecting genetically engineered organisms, protecting biodiversity and encouraging socially responsible farming. The second is ecologia. It was developed out of dominant historical event after the second half of 20th century, the Cold War between the United States and the Soviet Union. Our founding board members and staff grew up during this area, as it is written on its website, and it deals with struggling, the threats and the realities in the late 1980s when the Soviet Union opened up the opportunities for peaceful citizen diplomacy, energized our latest work. Ecologia has ecologists linked for organizing grassroots initiatives and action. It was founded by grassroots environmental activists from United States in 1989 in order to support grassroots environmental initiatives across the Soviet Union and Eastern Europe. The non-governmental organizations which are doing amazing work, you know them by NGOs, especially environmental ones, are playing an important role in the political, social and economic translations of the time or transitions of the time. Ecologia recognized that environmental NGOs in their former Soviet Union and Eastern Europe were able to establish their credibility by proving high quality, independent expertise and by advocating scientifically grounded policies. By contrast, Americans tend to approach environmental activism from a distinctly political perspective, viewing broad public participation as the key to success. Here we have Ecologia, which brought these perspectives together into an organizational strategy, combining professional quality, environmental science with effective public participation. For example, if we want to take an example from Ecologia, we will start with 1992, where Ecologia's Citizens Environmental Monitoring Network, an NGO which provided 11 countries with equipment and training to check and publicize water pollutants as a step towards changing industrial practice and public policy. In the summary of this whole chapter, we will deal with some important aspects we have been talking about in the lecture, like the institutions which play a dynamic role in fulfilling the Sustainable Development Goals, and the institutions which bring together all the stakeholders so as to facilitate the process of resource appraisal and management. The institutions by far are the converging point of the technical know-how of indigenous people and the state agencies. We know there should be a symbiotic relationship between institutions at different levels, failing which these institutions or institutional arrangements in resource management would lead to catastrophic events. It would be a futile exercise if we don't take that into consideration. The European Centre for Nature Conservation is a non-governmental organization which is working for conservation and sustainable use of Europe's nature. Every country on this earth should take a cue from Europe and US and see how different groups have come together to promote sustainable economic goals. We can learn from different organizations on this earth to manage resources, for betterment of resources and dealing with the global sustainable goals. Greenpeace, which exists because this fragile earth deserves a voice. It needs solutions, it needs change, it needs action. Greenpeace is an independent global campaigning organization that acts to change attitudes and behavior. In our country also, we need something as Greenpeace, as big as Greenpeace, which can conserve the environment and promote peace. Thank you.